Hey guys, welcome back here to Advanced Bass Fishing, and appreciate you guys swinging by the channel today for the video. And guys, today I want to talk about how you can turn a frustrating day on the water, or a frustrating series of days in the water, completely around, start catching fish again, and turn a bad day into a good day. Now, I sort of want to go over a little bit. You guys may have seen on my other channels. I just got done fishing a tournament up at Truman Lake last week. I had terrible practice. I wasn't catching hardly nothing. And I turned it around and finished 5th place in the tournament, almost won the tournament. I sort of want to go through that process a little bit and explain to you guys how you can take just a frustrating time on the water and just make a few adjustments and really come out ahead on that. Also, guys, one of the key things to me finishing 5th, and I talked about my co-angler with this, guys, is I was using this Baitpop scent that I talk about a lot heavily on both my jigs and my soft plastics. I really know it made a difference, guys, because when those fish are nosing down on a bait like a plastic worm or creature bait or jig, they say that they smell better than a dog. So having this scent, this has got real fish and real amino acids in it, definitely makes a difference. I'll have my Baitpop link in the description of this video. Comes in a bunch of different flavors and colors. So if you guys want to check that out, much appreciated. And again, thank you guys for everybody that's taken time to subscribe here to Advanced Bass Fishing. Really appreciate that. Okay, guys, let me explain this. I want to sort of tell you a little bit about this tournament and then explain to you guys how you can switch everything around. I practiced for half a day last Monday and half a day last Thursday for this tournament that was yesterday. And I caught one keeper in all that time that I was on the water. So basically I had a full day of practice. I had 8 to 10 hours total practice, and I caught one keeper. So needless to say, I was frustrated like we all get. Now, one of the things about fishing, guys, don't beat yourself up if you're having a hard time. And if you get out there and you feel like, man, I just suck, I can't feel like I can catch fish, I'm no good. Guys, you're not alone. Bass fishing is a tough sport, especially on a public body of water. So unless you got a farm pond that's loaded with hogs, or you got somebody that's got a private lake, where they're easy to catch, when you fish a public body of water, it's a grind a lot of times. So don't feel bad if you're struggling about it. We all do. I do. Everybody does. Okay, so here is sort of like what happened to me and some things that you can do to turn a bad day around. In this particular tournament, I was flipping bushes in the tournament. And most of my flipping under these conditions where you have like 3 foot of water in the cover, and we had water visibility, probably 6 to 8 inches visibility, pretty dirty. In a situation like that, I like to flip with like a 3/16 or 1/4 ounce sinker. I get a lot of bites on those lighter sinkers, and I have forever. But I just couldn't get any bites whatsoever. So I mixed it up. I fished the whole day. I couldn't get any bites flipping. The second day of practice, I tried some other stuff. Like I tried some deep cranking. I fished a big worm out deeper in 5 to 15 foot of water. Just trying to get something going. Couldn't get anything going. And then I wound up in the tournament going back to the bushes, and the adjustment that I made is I went to a real heavy sinker. I went to a 3/4 ounce sinker instead of a little 1/4 ounce, and just that difference of that fast fall made all the difference in the world, and I started getting bites. So that's one example of how I turned a bad situation into a good situation just by one adjustment. Okay, so here, and it doesn't always happen like this. That's just one thing that happened to me. Let me explain to you guys how you can go from having a frustrating day on the water to turning it around to a good day. Now, we all have a limited amount of time to spend on the water. So you can't make all the right decisions all the right time. You've only got a limited amount of time to fish a certain part of the lake, or, with certain techniques. So if you have 8 hours to fish, let's say, there's no way that you can cover the whole lake. You can't do it, especially if it's a big lake. I mean, anything over 1,000 acres. So don't even try to do that, first of all. You have to take the intimidation factor out away from your practice. And one of the easiest ways to take intimidation away from your practice or your time on the water is to simplify and narrow down your options that you have on that particular day. So the first thing that you have to do is in order to turn things around, you have to have a game plan going into this. And you have to sort of say, okay, I'm going to spend 3 hours fishing a spinnerbait on these lay down trees. And if it's working, great. If it's not working, I'm going to make an adjustment. So let's say that you fish a spinnerbait on lay down trees for 3 hours and don't have a bite. So you think it's like, that's not working. Maybe they don't want a spinnerbait. Maybe they want some type of a slower bait. That's the first thing you do. You decide the chasing modality of the fish. A bass is usually in a chasing mode or it's in a non-chasing mode. So if you fish for 2 or 3 hours with a spinnerbait or crankbait or some type of a moving bait and you don't get bit, don't leave your water, especially if it's decent water. If you got a place that's got some good looking cover and it looks like there's some bass in there, or maybe you've caught bass in there before, don't just leave it quite yet. Go from a moving bait into some type of a slow bait. That's the first thing that you do, and sometimes that can completely change it around. Sometimes that will bail your day out just right there. One more thing, let's say for example, you fish for maybe an hour with the slow bait in the same areas and you still hadn't got anything. The next thing you do is you incorporate at this point what I call the 20-minute rule, where you try a different color for 20 minutes. So instead of leaving that spot, and you've been here now for about 3 hours or so, you haven't had a bite. You've tried slow baits, you've tried fast baits. Maybe you tried a white and chartreuse spinnerbait, maybe you tried a green pumpkin worm or something. And before you leave that area, go through about 20 minutes, throw a different color spinnerbait and a different color of worm or jig or whatever slow bait. Go to a completely different color. And if that doesn't work, then it's time to get your bait out of there. If it's working, then great. And if you make the correct adjustment, like I did with the heavy sinker, then you're good to go, and you can turn it around right there. Okay, so let's say, for example, you fish for 3 or 4 hours. You've exhausted what you think is the possibilities with your lure selection and your colors and all that type of stuff, and you still can't get any bites. And say you've been fishing the spinnerbait around lay down trees and the water visibility is about 1.5 feet. The next thing that I like to do after that situation is I like to do a 180 on my approach. So instead of fishing shallow targets with the baits I talked about, the next move that I'm going to make is I'm going to try to go to a different water clarity. I'm going to try to maybe get to some cleaner water, and I'm going to locate to a different structure area on the lake. So instead of fishing lay down bank cover, docks, or whatever like that, I'm going to go out on the main lake and I'm going to look for a little bit cleaner water, and I'm going to spend the next hour running main lake points with a completely different technique. I may throw a wobble head jig, I may drag a football head jig out there, I may throw a deep diving crankbait. If it's cloudy, I might throw a topwater on that point, but I'm putting myself in a completely different type of water. So I'm going to do that. At this point, I've got to accelerate because I'm running out of time, so I have to accelerate these options. So I may try that for an hour. I may I may fish 3 or 4 points in an hour, and I'll crank some of them. I'll fish a big worm on some of them. I'll throw a topwater on some of them. If it's working, again, I've turned it around and I can run the pattern of running points. But if it's not working, then I'm down to about 3 hours now of my day. So I've got to exhaust some more options. So it's like, I know that I fish shallow targets, I fish points that are real good looking. What else can I do? And let's say there's another option of going to the very back of the coves. And like this time of year, we all know that the perch spawn in the back of the coves this time of year. There's usually always some bass back there looking for them. So I'll spend the next hour maybe going into the back ends of 4 or 5 coves and throwing a swim jig or maybe a frog or something like that. Again, if that's working, great, I can run that pattern. If not, I'm still running out of time. And whatever options are available with that particular day, just try to exploit them. If you got some bluff banks or whatever, try to fish those. But the point is you're looking for one bite, because one bite can turn your entire day around. And that's all it takes a lot of times. But you have to give yourself that opportunity. And that opportunity comes with, number one, jumping around to different type of cover, and number two, altering your bait selections. Usually it's some combination of that. But you can't just keep doing the same thing unless you think it's some type of a timing deal. Now, if you're, say for example, if you're fishing a tidal fishery and the fish bite according to different tide tables, yeah, you might just have to wait it out. Or say, for example, I've seen the situation where, like, if I'm deep cranking, usually they start biting about 10 o'clock. Or maybe I'm fishing a situation where shade comes into factor and I've got to wait till that sun gets up to throw the shade off. There's always extenuating circumstances. but you got to keep hunting. You've got to keep moving. And basically, bass fishing is hunting. It's no different. You're looking for the bass. Now, we're talking about traditional bass fishing. We're not talking about turning on a freaking $5,000 live scope and letting that live scope show you where the fish are at. I'm talking about traditional bass fishing techniques. So that's how you do it, guys. That's how you are constantly turning bad days into good days, is you have to think about the options and the possible scenarios about what could work. And here's the good thing that you need to remember all the time about bass fishing is you have ingenuity and creativity that is uniquely your own. And you have to capitalize on that, because a lot of times the best techniques and lures are the ones that nobody have thought about using before. I may get locked into a situation where I am adamant that they're just going to bite one color jig because I've caught so many on it, and you may come fishing with me and throw some color I've never even seen before and whack my butt with it because you're open-minded. But if you and I, let's say, for example, whoever's watching this video, if you and I got in the boat together and we said, okay, we're going to fish this riprap bank down here. Now, you're going to have an hour to fish it, and I'm going to have an hour to fish it. The way that you approach that riprap bank is probably going to be completely different than mine. I may throw like a little bitty crankbait, or I may throw a shaky head on it, and you may throw a big square bill, or maybe you're throwing a jerk bait or a popper or something. We're going to approach that differently. And on any given day, you're going to beat me sometimes because you made that right decision, and I'm going to beat you sometimes because I made the right decision. But nevertheless, having that own imagination and approach that you have just yourself, that is your PowerPoint in fishing. So give yourself credit for that and have confidence that your own open-mindedness and creativity a lot of times is going to lead to your own success. So anyway, guys, that's just sort of my system to go through it. Hope it helps you guys turn those bad days around, and we'll check in later.